This is Uncensored Conservatism, episode number 160, looking at Project 2025. Chapter 19 of Project 2025 deals with the Department of Transportation. It was authored by Diana Furchtgott-Roth, a transportation policy expert with the Heritage Foundation, who served in the Transportation Department under George W. Bush. So the Transportation Department was founded to establish a policy framework for the transportation safety and regulation. It has been transformed into a department that aims to now create the world's leading transportation system. That means huge subsidies to preferred modes of transportation, as we shall see. Ideally, transportation projects should be funded at the state and local level, but if there is to be a federal funding, then that should be through block grants to the states. This way, states can prioritize needed projects without federal interference. However, Project 2025 seems to veer away from grants to government loans to states, and these loans would be predicated on a state's bond rating by reputable accreditors. That means the loan for a project must have a positive economic impact in the state and that the loan can be repaid. A lot of infrastructure projects can be funded through public-private partnerships. In exchange for financing, the private partners retains the right to maintain the asset and can collect fees from users or regular payments from the government. Now, people will bitch about increased tolls and such in these cases. But there are two means to finance: user fees or tolls, or your tax dollars. It would make better sense if, for example, drivers using the New Jersey Parkway, in New Jersey, pay a heavier burden than taxpayers in Iowa not using that parkway. These partnerships also, over time, deter political interference. They get the financing, and then they get out of the way. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration should update vehicle standards and publish them in a transparent method. Fuel economy standards deter the purchase of new and safer vehicles, and that may be a cause for increased vehicular accidents and fatalities. Fuel efficiency standards evolved in the 1970s in response to the Arab oil embargo. The Department of Transportation was tasked with setting the standards. Our domestic auto industry has done an exceptional job of producing cars that meet these increased standards over the years, but these guys have gotten in way over their greenhouse emission concerns with automobiles, and they now largely dictate the standards, not this guy on the left there. He, after pressure from the EPA, increased the standards, not considering cost, safety, or feasibility, because the Biden administration went all in on electric vehicles. Now it's obvious from the subsidies granted towards the production and purchase of electric vehicles that their sales have gone up. Because of the EPA's greenhouse emission rules, they largely neutered the Transportation Department in establishing efficiency standards. Further, California was granted a waiver under the Clean Air Act after it issued its own fuel efficiency standards, which incidentally federal law preempts. California's waiver allows the state to phase out internal combustion cars by 2035 and now allows states to follow California's lead. In effect, California is dictating things here. I mean, what kind of shit is this? And speaking of electric vehicles, there's a national security concern since China and other adversaries hold monopolies on certain minerals needed for those batteries. Meanwhile, those vehicles have to be charged. Where do the climate change doomsdayers think energy for those charging stations comes from? I mean, a freaking nearby windmill? At the very least, until some common sense takes over, roll back fuel economy standards to no higher than 35 miles per gallon and leave it there. And maybe even involve these guys for any future changes. Now for infrastructure. Over the years, the federal highway funds have been used for a variety of things, including ferry boat terminals, bike paths, hiking trails, and even sidewalks. I mean, what the fuck? Here's a novel idea. Why not use highway fund grants or loans strictly for, I don't know, highway projects? With the airline industry, the government should encourage joint ventures between smaller carriers like JetBlue and Spirit to compete with the bigger airlines. Foreign ownership of domestic airlines should also be a consideration. The government should foster the entry of new airlines into the market with approvals taking no more than 12 months of regulatory review. The Essential Air Service program was started in the 1970s to deal with deregulation of the airline industry. But today it subsidizes flights to and from 200 airports that are not commercially viable. Just end the program. The FAA is the only aviation authority in the world that does not assess fees for their services. This might become a priority. Further, get the FAA out of research and development, leave that to the private sector, and have the FAA simply test and certify the new technologies. In Europe, conventional control towers are being replaced by digital remote towers with great success, so that's a possibility here in the United States. Capital investment grants are now used to expand rather than maintain and improve existing transportation infrastructure. As a result, it now funds rail lines that are seldom used and even costly streetcars. The Highway Trust Fund is intended for highways, not mass transit. Mass transit should be a state function. Some railroad regulations can be relaxed. For example, one regulation requires there to be 2 crew members when one can adequately and safely do the job. The Railroad Administration is using costly 50-year-old requirements for track inspections. There are regulations on the number and certification of dispatchers and signal employees when their own administration concedes there's no enhanced safety as a result. Finally, Congress needs to consider repeal of the Jones Act, which has a negative effect on shipping. For example, no liquefied natural gas can be transported by ship from Alaska to the lower 48 because there are no U.S. flag ships to carry it. If there's a concern about a national fleet capacity, this can be alleviated by an expansion of the Defense Reserve Fleet. And that's pretty much it for this chapter in transportation. This is Trump's nominee to be Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, and I wish him luck. But luck or no luck, he's certainly an upgrade over this clown. So have a great day and a more pleasant tomorrow.